I never planned to be a chairman of a club. I never planned to be the chairman of the club of the fourth biggest city in France. Never, ever. I've been a scout, I've been a director, I've been a coach, I've been a fitness coach, and now I'm at the tip of the pyramid. I'm the chairman of a club. And because I had the incredible privilege of growing up into football, being nurtured by the likes of David Dean, Arsene Wenger and others, then I learned very quickly, how to develop. The more I could put words into what culture meant, words into how to incorporate culture in high performance. And it was very clear when I left Fenerbahce Istanbul, my next job as a leader, this is something I want to implement. At the same time that we were transforming the culture, we were winning games. So people were saying, finally I can be proud, and finally somebody is listening and taking care of what we are and of my football club. So when we do interview players, and if we are not comfortable with them, then we move on. One of the questions I ask, what's the last game you watch on TV? If the player doesn't have an answer, I know he doesn't like football. And if he doesn't like football, then it's a red flag for us, straight away.
Hi, I'm Chad Biagini, host of the Excellent Leadership Podcast and president of Nolan Partners, and I'm joined today by Damien Comolli, chairman of Toulouse Football Club. Damien, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be in such a prestigious part of such a prestigious podcast.
Damien, you've had one of the greatest careers in sport. You've gotten to work for major clubs in a variety of different markets. Mm-hmm. Rather than me tell you your story, tell me your story, because I would love to hear how did this all begin to get to where you are today? Take us back.
Whoa. I think it started with my passion for football, which is apart from my kids and my wife, which is my reason to live. I wake up every morning for football, and that's been the case since I was 3 or 4 years old.
That early?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Easy. Every kid that grows up is a football fan. I wanted to be a player, a professional player. So I went all through the ranks and then ended up playing for Monaco Academy.
How old were you?
I was 17, 18. And then quickly realized I was not doing the same sports than the likes of Lilian Thuram or Emmanuel Petit. Emmanuel Petit is 1 year older than me, and Lilian Thuram is 2 years younger than me. And watching them play in Monaco youth, I'm thinking those guys are made differently than me. So I realized...
But to just qualify for that level meant that you must have been an outstanding player.
I was
but there was another level.
Yeah, definitely. And then I thought to myself, okay, I need to stay in football because it's my life, but what can I do to stay in football? And then I think 18 or 19, I started to get my coaching badges, because I thought if I want to stay in football, then I can only be a coach or fitness coach or something like this. So I was starting to get my coaching badges.
It's probably one of the only roles you knew existed at that time too. I don't think a lot of 16-year-olds know about sponsorship sales or hospitality or...
Absolutely. And I just wanted to be on the pitch every day. If I couldn't do it as a player, then I could do it as a coach, as a youth coach, actually. My only ambition was to be a youth coach in Monaco's academy. That was my dream job. And then I got my full badge. The first one is the equivalent today, probably UEFA A or UEFA B. It goes back a long time. So, and then kindly the club paid for my license. I didn't even have a driving license. So my mum was driving me to the coaching license, to get the coaching license. All the other guys were 35, 40, 50. They were laughing. And I got this, and then I went to see the chairman of Monaco. I said, I like to coach the under-8s or under-9s or the B or C teams of the under-8s or under-9s. He said, great, thank you very much for your commitment. He said, come back on the 1st of August, we'll give you a team. Turn up on the 1st of August, 92. And they say, okay, we have an issue. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm done there. I don't even have, they forgot about me. He said, we just fired the under-16 coach from the academy, and you are taking over for a month by the time we find someone. But you cannot play anymore. You have to stop your career. I said, well, that's probably good for football. So I'm happily stopped my career. And then I stayed 4 years.
And at that time, would you have viewed U16 as a more prestigious job than U9?
Of course. Well, in year 2, I had the opportunity to coach Thierry Henry a few times. So you can, or year 3. So you can imagine, it was a very prestigious job. And I stayed 4 years. And then a few months later, they call me back, say, actually, we need to give you, on top of the under 16, the 3 under 10 teams, because we have also an issue with the coach. And that's how I started, coaching 7 to 8 training sessions a week, 3 to 4 games per weekend. It was absolutely incredible. And at the time, a youth coach was properly a one-man band.
Yeah.
You know, so I was scouting at times, I was fitness coach, I was goalkeeper coach, and then at some point I did proper once a week on Wednesday afternoon goalkeeper coaching training sessions. So I was taking the goalkeepers of 3 or 4 different age groups and doing training sessions as well. And I've learned so much. It was incredible. So I started as a coach.
Damien, before you move on from there, just because not everybody who listens to this will know, how much of a U10 coach is winning as 9 and 10-year-old boys versus preparing them to win as 16, 18, 22-year-old men? Because I'm sure there's a lot of pressure to try to win in the existing age category if you're a coach. But if you're playing in the existing age category, maybe you're prioritizing kids who might be more athletically developed at 9 years old, even if they don't have as high of potential. So what is that balance and tension?
I think the landscape has changed so much from 30 plus years ago to what we are doing now in clubs. So we are talking about biobanding now. We do biobanding in Toulouse. Yeah, so, and it's something we had no idea what it was at the time. I remember the under 17. So I was assistant coach with the under 17s as well in Monaco. The strategy, the tactics was, okay, we defend deep. As soon as we get the hold of the ball, we play long to Thierry Henry in the space, and he's going to score a goal. He scored 17 2 seasons. So there was a lot less aspect.
He was that much of a star.
It was incredible. And he was so quick and he was so strong and so powerful that he was dominating that league. Like if he was playing against under 12s and he was 16, 17. So yes, there was not all the approach that we've been having in youth football, youth soccer in the last, let's say 5 to 10 years is so different from what we used to do at the time. And nowadays it's a lot more focused on developing players rather than developing teams to win at youth level. But the landscape has just changed, 30 years ago and today is just different.
Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. So you had this foundation as a coach and then I interrupt you, so keep going.
So then I had an opportunity to go and coach in Japan. So I coached the under 18s in Nagasaki, which was an amazing experience. There is a dotted line there, and the dotted line the dotted line for me to Arsène Wenger, because Arsène was the head coach, the manager of Monaco at the time. And I took advice from him, and when I started coaching and when I was a player as well, not with him but underneath in the academy. He leaves Monaco, goes in Japan for Nagoya Grand Crusade, and then I've got this opportunity to go and coach in Japan. So I'm calling him and say, what should I do? He said, look, it's a great place, you should come. It's a really great place. So I signed my contract, about to fly to Japan, and he signs for Arsenal as a manager. I'm like, what's going on here? I'm supposed to come and meet you, and you come back to Europe. So that was frustrating and funny at the same time. But I spent a year in Japan, which was an incredible experience.
I bet. How old are you at this time?
It was in 95. I was 23 and a half, 24.
Yeah. You're still a kid. You feel like an adult, but you're still a kid. How life-shaping.
But on a 5 years coaching experience already in one of the best academy in Europe. Yeah. So yes, I was very young, but still a little bit of experience at the time in terms of coaching, not in life. So being there, it was a great experience to work with Japanese players. When I got there, we were playing out of a calendar year. One year we played 120 games. So we play Saturday, Sunday with the same players every weekend.
Really?
Training sessions of 4 hours every afternoon.
And that was just culture.
Yeah, it was culture. And in the province of Nagasaki, which is one of the hottest places in Japan. So it was 4 hours in the sun, in 100% humidity, and everybody was happy and smiling, and they were asking for more. And I had to hide balls at some time. The footballs, I had to hide them. Otherwise, they would have trained for 6 hours or 7 hours. So it was great experience. It's the biggest culture shock I've ever experienced in my life. So even, if I go to thankfully, in that job, I traveled the world in all of my jobs, and the only place where I really had a culture shock was in Japan. More than if I went to South America, Africa, whatever. But Japan is really different, and I loved being there. I really did.
We just came back from 17 days in Japan as a family.
Okay.
We loved it. My kids, I think they'll see the world differently from it because it is a different world in many respects. Just some of the values of society, you do what's best for society versus what's best for yourself, so to speak. It was probably interesting elements in coaching too. You probably had a lot of kids who were fine with playing their role versus being the superstar because culturally that often takes place.
Correct. But the downside to that is difficult to, and I remember I'm speaking about it with Eddie Jones many times, the former England coach, rugby coach, in Japan. He's half Japanese, half Australian, and I think he's back in Japan now. The downside of that is it's difficult to develop creativity with Japanese players because it's difficult to empower them. It's difficult to tell them, you have freedom on the pitch. You have the freedom to express your talent. It's not a society that is used to that. And I remember very well my uncle and my aunt visiting me at the time. So he was 96. And I was telling them, I can feel there's something not right in the Japanese society. And I think it's going to decline in terms of economical power, in terms of other countries are moving at a very fast pace. And I didn't feel it was the case for Japan. And 30 years ago, we are in a situation where it's actually happening. So there is a lot of upsides, but there is some downside in coaching Japanese players, which is a shame. But we're starting to see Japanese players coming to Europe who are very talented and can express their creativity, but they leave the country early. I think that's a big thing.
That's it. That's fascinating.
Yeah. So anyway, Arsene signs for Arsenal as a manager, and then I come at the end of my first year of my contract, the 3 years contract. So I came to see him in London. I said, "What should I do?" He said, "Come to join me at Arsenal." I said, "To do what?" He said, "I don't know yet, but just come here." So I leave Japan, goes to see him. I said, "What am I supposed to do?" He said, "I don't know. We'll find out." And then he introduced me to the chief scout of Arsenal at the time, who was really fed up with traveling to France every weekend because Arsene was sending him to watch players in France. So Arsene said, "Look, work with Damien in Monaco, and he could be our scout in France." And that's how I started scouting. So I started as a local French scout, and then expanded. At the end of the first year, I became European scout. Stayed 7 years and traveled the world and went to South America, Africa, Asia, everywhere you can think of. Russia, Ukraine, like an international scout in a top Premier League club. The first few years were frustrating because I still wanted to coach. And my goal was always to be a coach. But after a few years, Arsene said, just I'm fed up with you telling me you're not happy with being a scout. Just do your job and shut up. So I did my job and shut up. And then after 2 or 3 years, I started to get calls from people or saying, "Would you be interested in being a sporting director or a chief scout first, and then head of recruitment, chief scout at the time, and then become a sporting director?" I had no idea what a sporting director should be doing or was doing. And every time I had those calls, Arsene used to tell me, "No, it's not the time. It's not the right time. You stay here. You stay here." Until the day I got the call, and I told him, said, "This time I cannot say no." It was Saint-Etienne. So at 32, I think I was 32, I became sporting director at Saint-Etienne, which was my first executive job. And then from then I was headhunted by Nolan Partners to go to Spurs as a sporting director. Then I was back to Saint-Etienne, then was a director of football at Liverpool, director of football at Fenerbahce. And then the transition was, I never planned to be a chairman of a club. I never planned to be the chairman of the club of the 4th biggest city in France. Never, ever. And I had this opportunity just during COVID, actually in 2020, and I took it. And it's been an incredible journey. But I've done, as I said, if I summarize, I've been a scout, I've been a director, I've been a coach, I've been a fitness coach, and now I'm at the tip of the pyramid. I'm the chairman of a club. And it's been incredible.
I love that journey. Thank you. Damien, there's not a lot of people with a similar story to yours, coaching to sporting director to chairman. That's a really uncommon story. But it's obviously a very relevant story. How do you feel coaching trained you for sporting director? And then from there, how sporting director empowered you to be a successful chairman?
I'm not sure there is a link, and yet I'm sure there are plenty of links. The transition from coaching to scouting was almost known, and I struggled at the beginning. I remember having a conversation when I was at Arsenal. I say, the most important person in the club is a coach or youth coach because he developed the players. And then people always say, it's not, it's the scout, because the scout, if the scouts are not good, the recruitment is not good, then you can have the best coach in the world. It won't develop.
You get the wrong players.
You get the wrong players. So it took me a while to understand how important recruitment was. And when I grew up idolizing Arsene and other coaches such as Saki and others, and Cruyff, and thinking they are the most important people. Well, they are, but providing you give them the raw material at the beginning. So the coaching to scouting was not really there was no real link or transition. From scouting to sporting director, when I was recruited by Saint-Etienne and then my Spurs, what they like a lot was in my profile was the recruitment bit, because I was known at the time, I hope I don't sound too arrogant, but I was known at the time for the recruitment success that we had at Arsenal. And rightly or wrongly, I was associated to that success. So that's what attracted those clubs to myself. But then after that, you have to grow into something much bigger, because when you're at Spurs football operations or Liverpool football operations, they are big operations. So if you are only a scout or you stick with your recruitment ability of players, then you miss out on all the rest. And then I grew into each job, actually. I think what I did, if the only credit I can give to myself, is I've always been very, very curious. So I never thought, okay, I'm only a scout and I don't look at what's going on outside. I remember at Monaco, I used to sneak into the room and listen to Arsene Wenger press conferences to see how he was managing the press. Or when I was at Arsenal, I used to ask tens of questions to David Dean. How did you get the Nike contract signed? Why did you use the money? The first Nike contract Arsenal signed, they took the money, built a new stand. So why did you do this? And I've always been very curious, whether it's about medical aspect or fitness or psychology or business, or commercial, sponsorship, press, relation with media. And because I had the incredible privilege of growing up into football, being nurtured by the likes of David Dean, Arsene Wenger and others, then I learned very quickly, how to develop. So I think that's how I got kind of, I'm not sure if I'm a full package, but a package decent enough to be able to end up in the job I'm in now.
Is curiosity a muscle that you're born with or one that you develop?
I don't know. I don't have the answer to that, but I'm still very curious. I'm still ask a lot of questions. If I'm into a banker or politician, I ask questions. Or an artist or a chef, I ask questions. So I still have it, and it's kind of become a natural habit. Because I think it's the only way to keep learning and to keep improving. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I've got this opportunity to ask questions to this person, and I cannot miss the opportunity.
Yeah.
So it's an ongoing process, and maybe I had it, but I make sure I still have it. Even now, I'm 52.
Yeah, I think it's something that we have to practice, because there's some people who are curious and they don't practice it. And I see that in interviewing all day, every day. There's sometimes somebody gives an answer and everybody is on the edge of their seat going, probe on that more. And the interviewer might have missed it, not ever seen it, right? Or they didn't feel comfortable asking the probe. And to continue building that. And a lot of the most talented executives, regardless of industry, to your point, they're curious. They want to know how the machine works, and they want to know how other machines work, because they can bring that learning into their own space and into their sector. So as a sporting leader, you're going to the revenue team and the marketing team and asking them questions. What a great piece of advice for listeners to say, don't just stay in your lane. Get to know others in other departments.
Yeah, it's exactly this. I think you can, as you're totally right, at some point you can fall into some sort of laziness. We say, okay, why should I go to that meeting? Why should I go to this conference? Why should I listen to this podcast? Why should I read that book? Well, because it's gonna fulfill your thirst for learning. And it's going to make you a better person. It's going to make you a better individual, a better executive at the end of the day. So it's an exercise that is tiring. The curiosity, I will say, at some point it can be tiring, but it's got to be nonstop.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. You were talking earlier about needing to scout the best people. Otherwise, you're developing the wrong people. There's a great book. It's called Work Rules. Laszlo Bock wrote it. He used to be vice president or head of HR at Google, and they had just done a lot of studies of their own internal population on that same topic. And what they saw was when they hired someone who was already an A or A plus, that person worked to develop themselves in their free time all the time. And if they ever said to that person, we're going to send you to this academic program or to this executive coaching, that person would say, thank you, I'm overjoyed by this. But if they had a B minus player and said, we want to send you to this coaching or this development, that person usually didn't like it. They were almost annoyed that their boss is saying they need to improve, and they didn't fully apply themselves. And so Laszlo and his team looked at that in sport and said, as we look at sport, baseball in particular, because people stay in the same roles, they're the pitcher's the pitcher, first baseman's first baseman, and the data were overwhelmingly in favor of the team that spends the most, wins the most over the course of a very long data set. Like a lot of sport, there usually is some level of correlation between what a player costs versus the value they bring. The business world, that's harder, because just because GE pays someone something doesn't mean that that's what they're worth to the market as a whole. So they just dedicated all of their HR resources into saying, we need to find the best people. The talent and development then becomes easier, and it enables our coaches internally. So it's a great book if you haven't read it. It's probably one of my favorite. I might be biased because I'm a recruiter that somebody finally wrote a recruiting book, but it applies in so many different areas of business.
Of course.
Your current role today, what are the values of Toulouse, and how do you make sure that's infused through the entire organization?
It's difficult for me to talk about the values because we try to keep them in-house, but I will give you a few. So if I can, I'd like to start from the beginning, because what we did when we arrived at the club, so we arrived at a club that's won one game in 18 months, got relegated during COVID, everyone and for 5 or 6 years trying to avoid relegation until it got relegated. And I thought actually that we could change the culture, keeping the same people, but interviewing everyone, I quickly realized that the losing part of it was so much ingrained into the club that there was no way we could change the culture or transform the culture with the same people. We changed a lot more than what we thought, and we were very, very adamant. So we are probably one of the only clubs in Europe and in France, certainly in France and in Europe, we've got a head of strategy and culture. And the role of this person, obviously, is to identify what the culture was, or help transform the culture, and then sustain the culture. And what we did, we got the whole of the staff together, and we say, what does Toulouse Football Club mean for you? There was a paperboard on each table, a group of 10, 8 or 10, one speaker per table. And then I said, when you're done, you speak, the speaker will present to us. And what was incredible is all the negativity that came out of this. So one group said, Toulouse equals to lose in 2 words. In English, they use the English word. We are the FC portal cabin, because the offices of the coaching staff are in portal cabins. We are losers. We are underachievers. But at the same time, what came out is we are proud of the color of the shirt is purple. The viola is purple. Very unique. We are proud because we have a very good academy. We are proud because of the city we represent, which is the absolutely magnificent city. So we took that, we thought, okay, we have a lot of work to do. And we spent, I think, 3 or 4 months with our head of strategy, identifying the positives and the negatives that came out of all those kind of town hall meetings, and we grouped them. We did a lot of work on them, and then we presented back to the whole club. We said, okay, this is what you told us. Those are the positives. Those are the negatives. And what you are telling us is that you want to create a high performance environment. You want to have the right people in the right place. You want to recruit good people. You want to start winning, and you want to be proud again of working for this football club. So where we are is not great. Where we want to go, it looks very nice. You know, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but you are going to tell us how we get there. We are going to guide you, support you, help you, but we are not telling you. You have to tell us. And we wanted the transformation of culture to be totally bottom up. We had no influence over it as a management, no influence. So we created more groups by department. So there were finance, pay, account, academy, etc. And we said, what do you want to work on? So we want to work on this, on that. We created 54 immediate projects that we could do within a week or a day or tomorrow or whatever. Then we created structural project, long-term project, and physiological project. And the whole club is involved in those.
I love that.
We just finished in February. We finished the 54 project. All of them are being delivered. And some of the structuring projects, like building a new training facility for the first team, we started on the 1st of January. We're investing 20 million euros on a new training facility just for the first team, only for the first team. Physiological project, how do we build a winning culture? And that's ongoing, as you can imagine.
Right.
And there is so much going on into that. During this process, we said we do not want to define values because as a club, we are not ready to have values. We didn't know where we stood 4 years ago when we bought the club in second division. So we said we are not ready to create those values. And then at some point during last season, just to give you the story. So on the 1st of September 2020, we are 19th in League 2, which is the equivalent of championship. So second tier. On the 1st of September 2020, on the 29th of April 23, we win the FA Cup. We are in Europe. In the meantime, we win promotion. We are champion of the championship. So in the space of less than 3 years, we go from bottom of the championship to Europe and winning major trophy in the Big Five leagues. And that accelerated the process of our cultural transformation. And because we changed people as well. We changed players, we changed coaches, we created a new executive team, etc., etc. And that accelerated the process to a point where people came to see our head of strategy and culture and say, actually, we are ready to define our values. Why are you slowing us down? So, okay, that's nice to hear. So we got all the people together again in a room and say, okay, if you have to define the values of Toulouse Football Club, what would that be? And we did the same exercise. And we got, I don't know how many words and sentences and values from those people. We spent 3 or 4 months putting them together, and then we presented back to them. So those are going to be the values of Toulouse Football Club. We are unique because we have a purple jersey, and there are only 4 clubs in Europe who have got one. We are unique because we are different. Everything we do is different. We are data-driven. We are 100% data-driven in all the decisions we make on the football side. And that makes us unique. We are unique in our playing style. We are different. So there are 4, 5, I think it's 8 words that we use into one sentence. And that has become a very, very, very strong base of what we are now, the club. But it took us a long time. We haven't touched one thing apart from one value. So when we created all those projects, philosophical projects, a lot of people said, Toulouse is a family club. Toulouse Football Club is a family club. And we were in this meeting, I'll say, yeah, that's great. We are a family, we love each other. What a great value. And then we were in one of the meetings, and our club doctor came from Monaco. After Monaco, he was in Lille. So, massive clubs. And he sat there, he looked at her, he said, I don't agree. I don't want to work in a family club. I want to win. I didn't come from Monaco and from Lille in Toulouse to be part of a family. I want to win. So we all looked at each other and we said, well, actually, he's got a point. So it's the only time in 4 years that as a senior management, we decided to remove something that was submitted by our staff. And we told them, we had months of discussion about it. And we said, this is the reason why we are removing it. And what we did, we took the example. I said, look, we are not a family, but we are a high-level sports team off the pitch, the team behind the pitch, the team behind the team. We don't have to love each other, but we have to perform. And high-level teams perform. They are not families. They are high-level teams. And if Toni Kroos doesn't want to pass the ball to Luka Modric, okay, they are not going on holiday together, but they are an incredible performing team. So we went from family to we are a high performance team, and you have to perform. And if you don't perform, unlike in a family, we'll push you out.
Yeah.
That was the whole process of creating this culture, transforming the culture, creating the values. To answer your question is how to ingrain it. We didn't have to because it didn't come from the top. It came from the people in the club who decided what the values should be. And I'm the safeguard of it. The head of strategy and culture, one of her role is honestly, I must spend 30% of my time on a daily basis to think about our culture. Are we aligned with our values? When we sign a player, when I speak to a coach, when I speak to our sponsors, when how the way we communicate, we've got an incredibly marketing team. A lot of people say we are probably the coolest club in France in the way we communicate. We are always out of the box. It's sometimes I'm not happy because I say that's not us. You're disrespecting our opponent. And sometimes they say, okay, but if you want us to be different and special, you need to let us do this. So we are constantly talking about the culture. And one of the roles of our head of strategy and culture is to make sure I'm aligned with this culture. Sometimes I say something or I behave the wrong way or I want to do the wrong deal in terms of transfer. And she says, you are not disrespecting our values. Part of the role is to keep me on track. And if I'm on track with our values and our culture, then everyone should be aligned with that. And it's easy to do it because it's organic. It comes from people within the club. It doesn't come from the top management.
I love that answer. Has culture always been this important and this intentional to you, or was there a moment in your career where you started saying, hey, when I'm a leader, we're doing this type of exercise as a club?
When I left Fenerbahce and I was approached by our current shareholders, Redbird Capital Partners, because they wanted to buy a club and they wanted me to run this club, it was very clear in my mind that this is something I would want to implement. I think it really, really started, I could put words to it, and a strategy behind it. It started at Liverpool, when I was director of football at Liverpool. And then the more I spoke to high-level organizations, I used to spend a lot of time with Beatrice Cycling and Dave Bracefold, and then when he went then with Sky Cycling, or with the All Blacks, or with different organizations, or understanding what Google, Apple were doing, etc., etc. The more I could put words into what culture meant, and words into how to incorporate culture in high performance. And then as I matured in my life and in my career, I thought to myself, and I did a lot of reading about what culture means, what purpose means, what values mean to people. And it was very clear when I left Fenerbahce Istanbul, my next job as a leader, and I didn't know I would be the chairman of the club, this is something I want to implement.
Yeah, we have a division at Nolan Partners called Ethos, and we work on those types of projects where you're saying, let's audit the current identity and culture of an organization. And to your point, oftentimes that's months of really diving into the data and then helping the group architect and shape what is our culture going forward. And the common theme is most people don't have somebody in their organization whose title is head of strategy and culture. So we've just done this for a couple NFL teams. We've got a baseball team we're working with right now. Corporate organizations are usually really intentional about their culture. Sport's a little bit behind there. And while it might be in the locker room, it's not always clearly articulated within the business operations. And I'm not sure why most haven't gotten there, but I'm sure because you did it this way, this bottom up, It's not me as chairman telling you how I expect all of you to be. You knew they had the answers inside of them because people who work there, they want to win. They want to perform. They want to be collegial.
Correct.
And so you got them to take ownership of it. When you proposed this to the staff, were they skeptical? Were they excited? I mean, they barely know you at this time. You're coming in from other clubs and they're all probably concerned about their jobs. What was the reception of, we're going through a big culture exercise together?
I think they were skeptical and relief at the same time that somebody is going to listen to me. That type of reaction. And somebody is going to take care of my beloved club that I've been working for 40 years or supporting for 40 years or whatever.
And I'm sure a lot of the employees are supporters.
Yeah.
That's their club.
Of course. And I remember some people coming up to me and say, I used not to say that I was working for Toulouse Football Club in the city because I felt ashamed.
Wow.
And now because we started winning, so the first year we lost in the playoff final. We got absolutely robbed by the referee. Last minute in Nantes, we were 1 goal short away. If we scored the second goal, we are up. And because, okay, we failed, but the next year we roll onto the division. We be all the possible records, number of goals scored at home, etc., etc. So, and we won the league. So, because we won very early and the club was losing for 6 years running, we, at the same time that we were transforming the culture, we were winning games. So people were saying, finally, I can be proud. And finally, somebody is listening and taking care of what we are and of my football club. So the skepticism, how do you say, when people are skeptics?
Skeptics, yeah, skeptical.
So the people who were skeptical turned very quickly into like flood of information they gave us and flood of emotions. So it was amazing. And now they're asking for it. Say, okay, what's the next project?
That's
and
great.
We call it, because, as I said many times, because we play in purple. So in the local language in the south of France, it's called Occitan language. Purple is viola. It's like viola in Fiorentina. They are called viola as well. And we call those years. So we call them the viola years, the viola season. We go every year from February to February, we do the viola season. And people know the viola season is what are we going to work on our culture during those 12 months. They're asking for it. They say, okay, what's the next project? What's the next viola project? Because they are very, very eager to work on the culture.
That's exciting. How do you ensure, you said this earlier, that you make sure staff and even signings fit culture? How do you assess that in an interview and evaluation process to make sure that this person, who obviously is going to have the technical fits you're looking for, are actually great brand representatives of the culture you're building?
Do you mean players or staff?
Either. Let's start with players.
So with players, we are totally data driven in the selection of players, but as you might have guessed, we are also extremely culture driven as a club. So what the learning process, data gives us an indication about the player's character and his personality, but not everything. So we don't scout players. We never watch players.
Really?
Never.
You let the data do the scouting?
Yes. So we watch videos, but we don't send scouts, like every other club do. What we do is our head of recruitment usually spend 3 to 5 days with every target we have, the final target. He goes to his house, he goes to eat with him, he says, take me to your favorite restaurant, take me to your nightclub. If you have one of the players says he doesn't. I want to meet your mom, I want to meet your dad, I want to meet your siblings. And we try to understand if that culture will fit in our culture. Part of our culture is our playing style. We are very, very strong on the way we play football because we feel the way we play football help us overperform. Just to give you an indication of how much we overperform, when we won promotion, we are the third highest wage bill. Last year, we had 19th wage bill. We won the league. We finished 13th. This year, we have 17th wage bill out of 18. We finished 11th. We got to the round of 32 of the Europa League. First time in the story of the club. So that the playing style part of it is a strong pillar of our culture. And once we know the data is telling us if that player's playing style will adapt to our playing style, we need to understand if his own culture fits to our culture. So that's why we do all this background research. We gather intelligence on the player. And I always say to our player liaison officer, I always tell her, when you pick up a player, the player walks into your car at the airport, he needs to understand what we are about. So every staff who is in touch with our players at the club needs to know our culture. He's a culture builder or culture architect, and the staff. And we try to sign players who are culture builders as well, and culture architects. And the most beautiful thing I heard in our changing room for the last 4 years, we recruited a player from second division in Holland, who was elected best player in the league, and then ended up signing for Ajax. He was kicked out by Ajax when he was 14, comes back on the front door at Ajax. I think he was second year or third year he was there last season. He's Dutch, doesn't speak French, never been to Toulouse before he came and signed for the club. Never knew what he was stepping into. And I remember after a halftime of a game last year, he said, guys, this is not Toulouse Football Club. And I'm thinking that we got something there. Because he was not happy with the playing style, he was not happy with the commitment. And when the players are the vector and the communicator of your culture and your values, you won. Especially if there are players who have no connection with the country, the city, the club, then you won. And those architect builders, we are trying to find them. Sometimes we fail. I've got to admit the data is telling us sign this player, but they don't fit culturally. And that's an incredible frustration. So when it happens, we review everything and we try to go even deeper into the research of their background and intelligence gathering. On the staff, the key for me is, are we addressing somebody who's going to serve the club or serve himself? Is he going to help himself? Will he be a taker or a giver? If he is a giver, then there is a great chance he's a culture fit with the club. If he's a taker, there is very little chance that he will stay for long. And that, during the interview process, especially at executive team level or board level, is something we try to assess a lot.
Yeah, I think those are phenomenal answers. It's hard to always see that in an interview process. That's where references become so important, or just as your chief scout might do, taking people out to dinner, seeing how they interact with others, because you do want people who have enough ego that they care about their work product. You do want people who have enough self-interest that they want to perform well. But once you reach a point where they care about themselves more than they care about the team, that's when it's not the right culture fit.
I totally agree. And what we try to assess, so when we interview players, we do interview players, because the luxury about working with data is if player number 1 says no, we go to number 2. If number 2 says no, we go to number 3, because the margin between 1 and 2 is so small. And the data allows us to have 10 to 15 players per position, as a target. And we are comfortable going for first or 10 because they are good, whatever, they are good. So when we do interview players, and if we are not comfortable with them, then we move on. One of the questions I ask, I say, what game did you watch last night? Or what's the last game you watched on TV? If the player doesn't have an answer, I know he doesn't like football. And if he doesn't like football, then it's a red flag for us straight away. Because if you don't like football, difficult. The key word at the moment in the performance, in the football industry, I will say is the player coachable. Very difficult to coach a player and for a player to accept to be coached. So meaning he wants to improve, he's dedicated, committed to his job on a daily basis. If he's not coachable, it's very difficult. If he's not passionate, the likelihood he's coachable is extremely unlikely. So for players, that's one question I ask. It's a trap, but it's a question I ask. We have also like a cloud of questions that we've been defining with our team psychologists, that all of us, we kind of have a question or 2 or 3 questions to ask to the player to try to gather his personality. And all this is the player doesn't realize he's being interviewed actually by our psychologists indirectly through us.
Right.
But we do that a lot. On leaders, like senior leaders at the club, what I look at, first of all, is I want people around me who are more intelligent than me. They have to be brighter than me. They have to be much better than me. That's the first thing I'm looking for. Secondly, we are looking for high performer. Third, and that's something that our head of strategy came up with about a year ago or 2 years ago. She said, we cannot afford in a small organization like we are. We don't have money. We have very small resources. We cannot afford to make mistakes. Signing people, getting people who are not self-driven. The intrinsic motivation is a non-negotiable. And then it's about the high performer. It's a very thin line between high performance and toxicity. Coming back to your point, when does the individual work on for himself and not for the club? And I'm ready to take every risk of getting a high performance individual or high value individual, high performer, providing it doesn't become toxic. And it's part of my job to make sure he stays on that line or she stays on that line. And the beauty of it is you can be sure once a year, if not twice a year, our team psychologist or our head of strategy come to see me and say, you are being toxic. You are being toxic to the environment. You are being toxic to your players. You are being toxic to the coaching staff. You are being toxic. So come back on the right line. And so if I'm the first one being toxic at some part of the season, then this is something I cannot let happen. So they need to bring me back on track. And
they feel comfortable saying that to you.
Oh yeah, well, if they have to.
Yeah.
It's part of the job. I mean, their duty is to keep me on track. And if I feel at some point I'm being toxic because I'm never happy because the team is not performing or I'm not happy with the performances of the coaching staff, the players or whatever, I let those people know, and sometimes in the wrong way. And I become toxic. And if I'm toxic, everyone below me will be toxic. But so because I've learned how to identify the time where I'm being toxic or I've been told, and so the more I learn about it, so I can see it coming. And I try to manage myself. But at the same time, all the high performers we have in our leadership team at the club, we cannot let them being toxic, but at the same time, we cannot afford not to have high performers. And that's why it's an incredible thin line between the two. But I will never say no to a high performer, providing at the beginning I feel there is something in him that makes him a team player. And he's intrinsically motivated. We can't afford to push people all the time. They have to push themselves. And they have to carry the organization up.
I had a very successful championship coach in rugby the other day share, to your point, that the top thing that matters to him is that somebody loves the game. And he goes, don't get me wrong, you can make a lot of money playing some sports, but I don't want them to love money first. You can win in a lot of different sports. I don't want them to love winning first. And his whole point was, he goes, those who love the game, when I say day off, there's no practice on Saturday, you know what they're doing at home? They're practicing.
Of course.
Because they love it that much. He's like, and that is the intrinsic motivator that I need in my people. I see it in my day job all the time too. There's a lot of people who want to work in sport, but it's those who actually love their job function, legal, finance, governance, supply chain, scouting, whatever it is, who are often the ones who can persevere and push through some really hard times in a business because they genuinely love the work itself, not the brand, the badge,
correct,
the championship, because that team won't always win. And that team culture might have some shifts and changes over time, but do they still love legal? Great. They're going to find ways to persevere through a lot of these elements.
There is one thing, I've got to be honest with you. I met world champions, football world champions in my life who don't like football.
Yeah,
but
me too. Yeah.
But they love competition. If they could have been in baseball or basketball or tennis or whatever or NFL, they will be incredible competitors. So I think the love of competition and the intrinsic motivation say, okay, I happen to play football and to be very good at it and to be a world champion at that level. I don't really love football, but there is no way this guy is going to beat me.
Yeah.
There is no way. So the love for competition sometimes compensate the lack of passion for the sport.
Yeah, for sure.
But there is a love. And whether it's the love for the sport or the love for competition, it doesn't really matter as long as they are there. It's there. It's in them.
And there's no better example probably than traditional corporate environment, because most people don't love hand soap or love paper towels, right? They love competing and they love their job, and therefore they can help Unilever win market share or whoever they might be working. So in your career then, how do you continue to find ways to further develop yourself professionally, personally, take care of your health? I mean, there's so many areas to continue being a high performer you need to invest into, but it's hard to find that time when you have a role as all-encompassing as a chair.
Yeah, so learning is an issue, and at the moment I'm totally snowed under, for example, and I'm gonna be for probably another month. And it's frustrating for me because I don't have time to learn, and I hate it. I'm obsessed about learning. I learn by reading, and by reading a lot of stuff which is not football related, not sports related, actually.
What are you reading, or what do you like to read?
I read Harvard's Business Review every other month because now it comes out every 2 months.
They didn't lower the price though.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I mean, I can afford it.
Same price, half the production.
Yeah. So that's kind of a Bible. I'm not religious, but it's kind of my business Bible. I go to conferences. I listen to podcasts like this one. I won't listen to my podcast, but to your podcast. If I'm sitting, the privilege I have in my position, I encounter a lot of very successful businessmen or politicians. And if I'm sitting with a politician, I ask him, okay, how was Jacques Chirac as a president? How was Sarkozy as a president? How did you deal with this conflict in the Middle East? And I'm sure I'm going to get something about leadership. I'm sure I'm going to get something about how do you deal with pressure. So it's constant. So there is the formal. I say, okay, this book, I'm going to read it. Currently, I'm reading a book on Charles de Gaulle, his first years up to the end of World War II, about the resilience, about the mental strength, about the vision, so it's constant. And the inspiration comes from a lot of different places and a lot of different areas. Where I'm frustrated and I'm scared, I'm not frustrated, I'm scared, is when I won't have time to learn. It's not that I will not improve. I'll stand still. If I stand still, then I become worse, basically. And that really scares me. It does. For the last 3 or 4 months, I haven't been able to learn as much as I want to. And I'm scared that something will come out and I don't know about, or a new idea will come out and I was not on top of it. So it's back to your curiosity question at the beginning, I think. As far as the well-being is concerned, I try to stay fit. I'm a terrible sleeper. I can't sleep. So I sleep 4 to 5 hours a night, which is enough. But I look after my nutrition, hydration. I try to do sports at least twice, if ideally 3 times a week, but twice is already a miracle. Yeah, I always thought when people look at you as a leader, you need to inspire them. And to inspire, you cannot inspire them if you don't look decent, basically. And I think people who don't work in a high performance world, in a high performance industry, maybe they don't realize how demanding it is physically to have a 10 months or 11 month season. We play 50 times. Okay, the players play, the coaches play, but we take the stress, we take the travel, we don't take a break. At the moment, all our players and coaching staff are off for 6 weeks. And we work and we keep working and we keep working as an executive team or senior management. So it's physically very demanding, mentally draining. And to be able to sustain it, you need to look after yourself.
Yeah, no, it's so important, especially when you travel. I've gotten into the routine of saying the moment I land, I'm going on a jog or I'm going on a bike ride.
That's great.
I've started booking my flights around it because if it's not a routine for me, it's easy for me to quit it.
Absolutely.
But now it's like I'm trying to make it part of my identity, right? I'm somebody who does this activity when I land. It's amazing how much better that business trip becomes, that vacation becomes, because I've established it in that moment. But went years not doing this. And you start noticing the health deteriorate, the energy deteriorate. It's so important.
I almost eat like a player.
Yeah, do you?
Oh, yeah. Well, sometimes I have to socialize, so I'll have drink and stuff, but because it's part of the job. But if I can, I follow what the nutritionist gives to the players.
Yeah. To make sure you're eating healthy.
Yes, and drink the right things.
That's right. So we'll wrap up. Transition with 7 questions we ask everybody. We call it the 7 question blitz, see what common themes there are and get to learn about people. So first one for you. What sporting event have you never attended that would be on your sporting bucket list?
Sadly, I think I've done all of them.
Have you done them all? Good.
Sadly, because I'm only 52 and still have a lot of years to go.
You're gonna have to do something like the cheese wheel log that happens in Gloucestershire or something.
Yeah,
you've checked all the big ones.
I'm not sure I'll drive 3 hours to see it though. No, joking apart, I think I've done a lot of Rugby World Cup, but if I could attend the Rugby World Cup final with France beating England, that would be a dream.
That would be the win.
Yeah, because I love rugby. And the other things will be to watch the Golden State Warriors in the NBA finals because I lived in San Francisco when I was a kid. So I haven't been supporting the Warriors since they've been good. I've been supporting the Warriors through the horrible times.
Yeah.
Since 87, 88. So they were bad. And watching them, I watched them on TV win the NBA Finals the last few years, not live. So I will say those two things.
Yeah, I love that answer. Of all the sporting memories that you've been to, what's your favorite? What stands out to you as the most memorable?
Oh, it's so difficult. It's impossible. People often ask me this question.
Yeah, you've had some good ones though.
Yeah, exactly. So whether, my hometown team, rugby team, when I grew up was the best in Europe, winning the league in France all the time. And the first time I saw them win the championship was in 78. I was 7. And that's my first big memory. And I can't rank them. France winning the World Cup, twice, and me being in the stadium in 98 with watching players that I either coached or like Thierry Henry or scouted like Vieira and others winning for France. It was incredible, winning the Premier League 3 times with Arsenal, the FA Cup with Arsenal, the double twice, winning a trophy at Wembley with Spurs, which was incredible, with Liverpool, which was incredible, winning the FA Cup with Toulouse. How do you define that? Going from bottom of second tier of French football to winning the FA Cup in less than 3 years. How do you find that? It's so I can't rank them. Sorry, I don't have the answer. I just can't rank them. But to be honest with you, I remember more the defeats than losing finals or titles than winning. Winning doesn't really interest me. The only upside of winning is not losing. I wake up every day not to lose.
Yeah.
I don't wake up to win. I wake up not to lose games and not to be mediocre and not to be average. The losing hurts me a lot more than the enjoyment of winning. Lost some cups, cup finals and European finals and stuff like that. I think about the losses a lot more than I think about the wins. And sadly, as Arsene was coming towards the end of his management career, he said to me one day, I thought it would get easier with getting old. It gets worse. So sadly, it's going to get worse for me as well, probably. But that's what it is.
All right, I'm going to take a rabbit trail because I wanted to ask it earlier and I just remembered. You've worked for the biggest clubs on the planet. What went through your mind to say, you know what, I'm going to go to a second division club? Obviously, you knew what Toulouse could be, but to leave a big club like Fenerbahce, you could have easily gone back to another big club in Europe. Yeah, and you said, I'm going to go second division and try to build it. What was your kind of consideration at that time?
Different things. One, I've never been a chairman before. So either I was going into another job I've done before in a different club, but I've never been a chairman before. Secondly, my approach was to say, I build teams or help build teams winning championship, help build teams or build teams that won cups and trophies, get into Champions League, blah, blah, blah. Can I build a team to get promoted? I had no idea if I could do it. No idea.
It was the challenge.
Yeah. And I was very humble about it. I thought, maybe I'm not suited for this. Maybe I can't do it. That was the second thing.
What'd your wife say?
Great challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, she said. And then the third reason, it was the first time I had the opportunity to have some shares of the club. So it was not like an ownership employees situation, but more like on par. Partnership. And I changed everything, not for the money, but for being able to speak to people at the same level and implement my ideas, not having to deal with owners who are not going to the same direction or struggling to be aligned with the ownership that it happened to me before. I'm part of the ownership, so I have to be aligned, right? So that was the challenge.
I appreciate that answer. I'll go back to the questions.
To the other questions.
Yeah, I'll stay on track here, but I had to be nosy a little bit.
Okay, no problem.
So if you could go golfing with any 3 people, living or historic, who would it be?
So I'm very boring. There is only football in my life. I don't golf. But
fine, you can play 4-a-side. You can play 4-a-side football with them.
Because I come from the south of France, where we have a saying. We say the arts of the table. So the art of drinking and eating well. I will say it's an art. We say it's an art. So rather than going golfing, I'll go lunch or dinner.
Deal.
With people. I'll have 2 types, if I may. The first one, I'll have my wife, my 2 daughters, Bruce Springsteen and Arsene Wenger. Arsene, because every discussion I've known him since I was 18, I'm 52. Every dinner, lunch discussion, there is enlightenment coming out of it. Bruce Springsteen, because he's carried me through teenagehood, adulthood. He's been incredible help in my life with his songs. And I admire creativity. I'm not a creative person. You give me a task. You give me a club, I build it. But I'm not creative. I admire creativity, whether it's an artist, a singer, a chef, painter, whatever it is. And because he's my idol as well, Springsteen. I admire this creativity he has in him, which I absolutely don't have. So that's why I have time and appreciation and admiration for creative people. The second one I will have, I'll have a dinner with John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Charles de Gaulle, and Churchill. It's easy to be a leader. Bringing people together, being inspiring, it's easy. I found it easy. The most difficult thing in leadership is mental toughness and resilience.
Yeah.
And those people, through the times they went through, to say, I'm not moving I won't make any compromise for my country, or because I believe in something, and I'm carrying my country through this time because I'm driven, because I'm incredibly mental tough, and I'm resilient. This is what I admire the most in leadership. The rest is easy. The most difficult is to keep the commitment, the discipline towards what you want to be, go at the lead as a leader, what you want to take your organization. So you can imagine as a country or as a Western Hemisphere to a point for those three. And that leaves me speechless. And I love to have the opportunity to speak to them, saying, how on earth have you done that?
Yeah. It's interesting. We talk about it a lot here. First-time CEOs haven't always proven resilience yet. Many of them get to that role because they had a lot of success and growth along the way. And you have to be really thoughtful about whether they have resilience in their blood, because they don't always know either until they've actually faced those challenges. And many cave under pressure. So to have actually lived it, those are great examples, and people who've had to have some of the most challenging scenarios. What are some of your professional pet peeves?
I can't stand mediocrity. If there are people who are mediocre around me, they can't stay. I can't stand mediocrity, and I don't understand how somebody cannot be hardworking. It's just not, because it's not in my genes. It's not in my hardware. Sorry, there is no way I understand it. So I don't know if it's the right answer to your question.
I love it.
Those two things just drive me crazy.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I was looking for. What's something about you nobody knows? I've gotten to know you a lot today, but there's got to be something you didn't tell me yet. Something about you,
yeah,
that most people don't know about you.
Because I'm very open, doing this type of exercise, and I do it to give back to the community. I was incredibly privileged to have at some point Arsene Wenger say, okay, I'm going to help this guy, or David into saying, I'm going to help you, and whatever. So I try to give back to the sports industry or the community, sports community as a whole, by doing this type of exercise. And thank you for inviting me. People know I've got 2 daughters, but they don't know I've got amazing daughters. They've faced a lot of headwinds in their life. One is disabled. She's deaf, 100% deaf, went to university, learning a foreign language, moving to a foreign country as we speak today.
Wow.
To start a new job, when everyone told us she has no chance. And her sister, elder sister, went through 5 years of bullying, harassing, sexual violences at school, and she's a solicitor. And there are 2 incredible young girls, young women, 21 and 24. So people know I've got daughters, but they don't know how amazing they are. That's one thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing
talk about resilience. That's real resilience right there.
And the other thing would be, people know I'm married, but they don't know how amazing my wife is. She changed me. We met 5 years ago. She made me a better father, which is the most important thing. And she made me a better person and a better executive as well. So people know I have daughters and I have a wife, but they don't know how good they are.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure they'll be honored to hear that as well. Hardest question I'm going to ask you all day. If you weren't allowed to work in football, what would you be doing right now?
I'll be the most boring, depressed person on the planet. It's not a job in particular, as per se, but I will say I'll probably try to get people out of poverty, especially children. if I could have a job and get people out of poverty, I would love it. I will try to stop people's or countries fight stupid wars for stupid reasons. So maybe a diplomat or something. I think I won't be very patient because it doesn't think that diplomacy works greatly as of late. But that's probably something I will dedicate my life to, stop people from fighting each other.
Yeah, thank you. Final question, easy one. When I find myself traveling through Toulouse, where do I need to go to dinner?
You need to go to a restaurant which is called Pierre. It's written P-Y-R. The chef is called Pierre Lambinon. He's just turned 40. He's one of the most talented chefs in France at the moment. 2 stars Michelin star, on his way to get the 3rd one. Talk about creativity. I admire him for his creativity, what comes out of his dishes. So that's the place. And the bill is on me, by the way.
Oh, I would love to join you. I never turn down Michelin star restaurants.
You should try this
I'm
one.
in. I think I'll be there next week.
Sure.
Damien, wonderful spending time with you. Thank you for the engaging conversation, for being so open, and for sharing
Thank you for
as
having
much as
me.
you did.
Thank you very much.